Everybody's here, I believe that must be coming.
I have not heard that Deb will not be here.
Okay, number 3, additions to the agenda. And everybody got additions to the agenda sheet.
Yeah, there's one addition under business, that'd be number 11, and one under personnel, which would be number 3.
Okay. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda, or I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Seconded by Cheryl. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Okay. We are then right to public comment. And so, we for sure have Michelle Meyer here. So just a little instruction of public comment. We'd like you to come down to the microphone right in the middle here. And then just say who you are, what you're going to speak about, and you have the floor for up to 5 minutes. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, as Bruce stated, my name is Michelle Meyer. I have, my kids that are students, one's a preschool and one's a kindergarten, will be first grader. And my concern is safety, and I'm just going to tell you a little story what happened with the kindergartner. He walked out of school, this was the Friday before February President's Day holiday. He told the teacher he was going to visit his grandma in Augusta, not where I live. He ended up about 1.5 miles out of town, very cold. He was picked up by a Good Samaritan who said he was going to go get gas, and there was a policeman at the gas station and brought him to the policeman. I contacted the school on the following business day, which was Monday. I had off work for that holiday. I spoke to the principal, and he didn't really show any real concern. He just replied that there was no need to make any adjustments to their safety, how they deal with safety. So then I contacted the superintendent, and he spoke like he was concerned and stated he would look into it. So I contacted him again after a period of time. He again stated he would look into it and get back to me. And then when he got back to me, he talked about different things that had been thought about, but there was no need again to do anything different with safety. So then I happened to speak to the city administrator, and she suggested I come to the school board. And then more time went on, so I'm here tonight. So the reason why I'm here tonight is I only want to look forward, and I do think there does need to be some adjustments just to make sure all the students are safe. I'm really concerned about not actually the kindergartner, but the 4-year-old is actually has autism, so he's not able to speak. So I went into his classroom one day to pick him up, and there's no need for ID or anything like that. I also understand that they're thinking about a locking system. I think that would be a good start. I also think that there's simple measures that could be taken, such as when you pick up a student from the gym, or when you go into the office supposedly to sign in, you're kind of just waved on. And you could show your ID at that time. I think all visitors that, and I'm not pretending to be an expert by any means. I just really think that there is some simple measures that could be taken, and if this locking system would increase safety, I think it needs to be seriously looked at instead of just, well, you know, we're not going to do that right now. And I know things can happen in small towns as well, and but I don't understand just making some little measures just to look at things and just to, especially after an incident like this happened. I actually talked to the principal weeks before, after I picked up my autism grandson, and just said, hey, you know, nobody asked who I was. I introduced myself, but there was no ID, there was no concerns. I mean, he obviously knew me, but these kids are, I just think they're at risk. And my other grandson, who was kindergarten, I mean, very young to be 1.5 miles out of town, you know, just, you know, told the teacher I'm going to visit grandma, and I'm not anything about what happened. I'm all about moving forward, and because of this incident and because of things that could happen, and because the school is full of students who are vulnerable, I just really want the safety issue to be looked at closely, and I want to thank you for my time.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have public comment again.
And I have a copy of a petition for you guys. You can just take one of those and hand them down. There you go. Thank you.
If you would introduce yourself on the microphone.
Okay, I'm Beverly Beavers.
I'm Gene Beavers, I'm moral support.
He's great moral support. All right. What I handed out to you this evening is a copy of a petition. The petition is requesting that you change the decision to have 3 sections for the 5th graders this fall and revert to having 4 sections. This class has always been in 4 sections, and to have 29 or 30 students per class is way too many. Having 23 and 24 this year for 4th grade was plenty, and each class did have some issues. And when all of them were on the playground together, those behaviors came out more and more. So adding 6 and 7 kids per room is just putting more behaviors together. Now, I could wow you with a bunch of statistics from the educational literature, but you can find statistics to support many positions relative to class sizes. The bottom line is that the smaller the student-to-teacher ratio, the better educational outcome. What I am hoping is for a balance between the kindergarten and 5th grade ratios. The current plan is to do 5th grade students, it would be 29-to-1 teacher, kindergarten 16-to-1, but a more balanced ratio would be 5th grade 23 or 24-to-1, and the kindergarten 20-to-21-to-1 teacher. These signatures have been obtained in person by myself and a few others who are motivated to inform and discuss the class size issue. I didn't talk to anyone that opposed the smaller class sizes. In fact, the overwhelming majority of parents were upset that the classes were going to increase in size. This petition represents parents opposed to this proposal should be reason enough to consider this request. More parents, I had heard, Mr. Rowland and Mr. Hewitt hadn't had many parents talk to them, but that's because they didn't know what was happening. I talked to so many parents that I asked them, what do you think about the class sizes for the fall? And they're like, what are you talking about? And there were a lot of them that didn't have any idea that this had been changed. Parents read the minutes in the Paynesville Press back in April when Mr. Orline said he was going to do the 4 sections of 5th grade. And at that time, I had talked to him and I said, after that meeting, I really appreciate that because I really feel that this class needs to have the 4 sections. And then 2 weeks later at the meeting, that I completely changed the plan. And many parents, would think, oh, good. They'd read the minutes in the paper and say, good, they're going to have 4 sections. And it sounded in the paper that this decision was made, and that's what it was going to be. And so they thought the final decision had been reached. This petition represents over half of this class of students. So over half of the parents have signed this petition to have this changed. And if you look at the ratios, and I'm coming to you as a parent that is very concerned about this, and I just want to appeal to your sense of logic in looking at the ratios and to have them be more balanced. Did you want to add anything? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Hello, I have Lori Holland, and I have concerns with 5th grade, upcoming 5th grade sizes as well. First of all, I'd like to thank the board and administrator for hearing my concerns. And although there's probably going to be disagreements between whatever is decided, I appreciate being heard, and I hope that our concerns, the parents that have concerns, that those things are considered and that decisions haven't been made and set in stone and we're just kind of going through the motions to pacify the parents. As a parent and a teacher in the past, I have concerns. I know that cuts have to be made, I know school funding is complicated, and it's not like you just balance your checkbook at home. I have concerns about the class sizes, the same that Bev said, so I don't need to reiterate those. But I want to know what the solutions are going to be. And it's not the kids with IEPs that I'm concerned about, it's the kids that are at average and above average work that I'm concerned about. It's that child that doesn't qualify for help, maybe does average work, maybe has dyslexia, but doesn't qualify for help because, well, they're at, grade level and they're average, but yet they just need a little extra help. It's those kids that in a classroom with a lot of kids, with not much support, teachers trying to do the best they can, it's those kids that easily kind of fall behind and slip through the cracks, which isn't fair to the kids. It would also be easy, and it's also that child that's very quiet and shy and isn't comfortable in a large class raising their hand and saying, you know what, I don't get this. Fortunately, that's not my daughter. Whether you want her there or not, she's going to make you know that you're there. But it's those other kids. Each class has its own dynamics, and to say comments like, well, this works in Wilmer, or this works in Fargo, or my son's class had these numbers and everything was just fine. Those comments are completely irrelevant to this particular class. There are some pretty nasty cliques in this group of kids, and there's some pretty nasty bullying going on. And in no way do I mean to imply this is a bad class. As a former teacher, there's no such thing as a bad class. It's only that this particular group has different needs than other group, as each group of kids have their own set of needs. Paynesville Schools has a phenomenal group of fourth grade teachers. These are also the people that know the dynamics, they know the strengths, and they know the areas where this particular group of kids might need a little extra help in growing. I hope that these staff members, the fourth grade teachers, have had the opportunity to give input in making this decision, because they're the people that know what's going to work and what's not going to work. I hope that's been considered. I also hope that next year's fifth grade teachers have also had the opportunity to hear what those dynamics are, hear the strengths, hear the areas where growth is needed. They're the people that have to work with the kids. They know better than anybody else what works in their classroom. Each teacher runs a classroom a little different, and they know what's going to work for them. I hope that they have had input in whatever solutions have been considered. They have good ideas, I'm sure. They've been doing this a long time, they know what they're doing. Probably better than, they work with kids every day, they know what works. Whatever the solution ends up becoming, I would like to know at what point, if another class teacher is not added, at what point will things be looked at to decide, well, this isn't working? Or, you know what, this works really well, but you know what, we need to do something a little different here. My fear is that by November, if things are going to fall apart, they'll go great until November, and then my fear is that things are going to kind of start to crumble a little bit. Well, then it's Thanksgiving, and it's only a short time till Christmas. We've got programs, conferences, busy time of the year. We'll just get through till Thanksgiving. We'll just get through till Christmas. Okay, January, we'll address it in January. Okay, so January comes, okay, what do we need to do differently? How are we gonna, solve this problem? Look at strengths, look where things need to go. Make a long story short, it could easily be March before there is something in place that is working and that's not acceptable. And so, I just want to know whatever the solution is, who is going to evaluate whether that solution is working, and when will that be? All of us want what's best for the kids. As parents, we can be proactive and we can make the best out of this situation. I know not all teachers are comfortable with parents, just as not all parents are comfortable with teachers in the classroom, nor are all parents able to do that. Personally speaking, I'm more than willing to help.
Can I interrupt you right there?
Yep.
For 1 second. Board, are we okay with a few extra minutes here? 5 minutes is
I'm
our
almost
time.
done.
Go ahead.
Personally, I'm more than willing to help. I've been helping, I'm up there a lot. Volunteering, I can do stuff at home, I can staple things, I can put packets together if teachers aren't comfortable. I can do small group stuff, I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done. I just hope that those 5th grade teachers are able to get the support that they need from administration, because they're going to need it. And I hope that they can come forward to that, and I hope if they need help, they're comfortable coming to parents and asking for help. Because parents, I mean, they can be a pain, but they can also be very supportive and they can be very helpful. So I appreciate your time, and I just hope that you consider the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna open the floor. Anybody else, even if you didn't sign in, that has comments?
I'm also a 5th grader with twins in that class, and I mean, basically, we're just here to support them, that we sign that, and we do really hope they reconsider adding another teacher.
Okay. Well,
First, if you want, would you like me to address?
yeah, the policy of this is if we have somebody here that can address you, we will do so. If we don't, because sometimes concerns come to the board and we don't have a clue, we have to have time to figure it out. But in this case, go ahead.
Do you want me to come down there?
Yeah, they can come down here.
All right. Good evening. First of all, I really do appreciate the fact that there are parents here. They're concerned, they're involved, and it makes me feel even a little more confident that the decision to have 3 sections of 5th grade and 4 sections of kindergarten is a decision based on information, scientific educational research, parental involvement, which is pretty obvious that throughout our grade school we have excellent parental involvement, and we have excellent teachers. Just a quick, I'll reiterate kind of what I went over earlier this spring about the class sizes. We're in a situation where we made numerous reductions in staff, and we were at the point where I needed to look at the 5th grade and the kindergarten. And I needed to decide where I would get the most bang for the buck with our staff that we had, because we have been reducing staff. Student population has been reducing over the years. And so what I did is I made a decision to have 4 sections of kindergarten, because there is very, very little research that shows that class size plays a large role in student achievement. Any data that shows that it is most effective in the primary grades, which is K1 and 2. If you look at any initiative that the federal government gives, the Department of Ed, everything is geared towards K3. Reading well by 3rd grade, the smaller class sizes, everything is geared towards K3. And so what I looked at was I knew that I only had 4 sections in a grade for 1 more year, because next year everyone will be a 3-section school based on our population. So I wanted to take advantage of the 1 year that we had and give those kindergartners the same opportunity that the current 5th graders had when they started school, and that was to have 4 sections. Support. With that in mind, I did have extensive conversations and meetings with the 5th grade teachers who are coming up. We run our 5th grade similar to a middle school program, which means we are departmentalized, which is different than it is K4. We have our math teacher, Mrs. Kemper, has a middle school math minor, and does extremely well working with all of our math students. Ed Gardner has his master's in reading, and he handles our reading and language arts. Mr. Swatsky has done a wonderful job in the 2 years that he has been here, and he will be teaching the science. Each teacher teaches their own social studies and art, and so they're moving around in different classrooms like they would be if they were in middle school. When they are in 6th grade next year, after next year, they will be a 3-section school. My job, our job, is to prepare our students to be ready for the middle school world when they get up there. It's a big step. And this was another way, it didn't really play into it, the decision, but it is a way to prepare students for that middle school aspect. Just a little bit of, and so services, concern of services, and I certainly appreciate that. We welcome parent volunteers. We care deeply about all of our students, and we want to give them all the best that we can and prepare them as they move on to the next level. We know that how we prepare our students, K-5, pre-K-5, affects the overall status of the high school and how those students are going to do in the future. And so we really, really take that to heart. What we've done to help, and with $300,000 in budget cuts, there's a little creativity in this. And what I've done for support, we have added a full-time certified teacher who will be teaching Title to our 4th and 5th grade students. That is something that we have not had. We've not had a full-time person at that. We also have a full-time Title person, certified teacher, who will be working primarily with K-3. And then another thing that was new that will be new this fall will be a full-time math core tutor who will be working with our students who do not qualify for Title and who do not qualify for special ed services, and that person will be working, they are required to only work with our 4th and 5th grade students, and so that person will be somebody who will work with small groups of students, sometimes during instructional time, sometimes it might be during a social studies time or whatever works best. The Title teacher will also be working with our 5th grade teachers when they're doing their power half hour during the week. We are, right now I'm in the West Central Ed that we are part of wrote a grant, and part of that grant, each school district receives $20,000 to be used as something, and we can use the money in a way that will help with student discipline, bullying, tutoring, anything like that. And so it hasn't been posted yet. I'm still working out the details, but we will be posting for a full-time, hopefully full-time, based on the amount of money that we have. And that person will be in a role of a kind of a math tutor, discipline person, somebody working with students. That will be, again, this grant from the Department of Ed is geared towards our primary students, but with any student issues, things like that, that person would be able to work with our 4th and 5th graders also. So there are a lot of things. The concern, I think, is where is that middle student? Where is that high flyer going to fall into this? And the bottom line is teachers are responsible for providing the instruction, challenging the students who are doing well, and creating an atmosphere that the students are comfortable in. And I am fully confident that the current 5th grade teachers are going to do a wonderful job. We have talked about what we're going to do. They are fully aware of the need to catch our high flyers and work with our students who are not receiving services, because, you know, it always seems like our services are always geared towards the students who are not achieving well. And the reason for that with the Department of Ed is Minnesota ranks as one of the highest states with an achievement gap between our free and reduced students and our students who are not free and reduced. So they are throwing a lot of money and funding into those grade levels. With the tight budgets, we have a limited gifted and talented budget that we have. We don't have a gifted and talented program because funds don't allow us to have that at this time. But our teachers are fully aware of the need to adjust our power half hour so that our students are getting interventions, whether it's the students who are low academically or the students that are high. As far as monitoring and making sure that things are going smoothly, that is absolutely my responsibility, and I take that very seriously. This decision was not made in haste. It was based on conversation, research, consultation with other school districts, and I really feel that kindergarten will benefit immensely from this. Just a few things. Right now, when I put this together late last week, coming into fifth grade, we'll have 86 students. We recently lost one in the spring, and we lost one, I think, the beginning of July, because they moved. I think both of them might have moved to Hutchinson. I know one did. So we're at 86 students, which puts us at, that would put us at 28.6 students in that grade level. If I were to have 4 sections of fifth grade and 3 sections of kindergarten, fifth grade would be the smallest grade class in the school, which flies opposite in what research says about primary grades needing the most. Since school ended, we have added 6 kindergarten students. So we are up to 71 as of last week. We projected 65, which if we, with 4 sections of kindergarten at 71 would put us at 17.75. I don't like to consider a 0.75 student, but that rounding up, that's what we're looking at, which is a significant increase from where we were in the spring, which is wonderful, If we were to have 3 sections of kindergarten, they would be the second highest number of students in a class in our school, which again is the opposite of what we want to accomplish. I just did some checking, as you know, I like to meet with colleagues and discuss items, and just in comparison, I guess, you know, there are some school districts that have a policy on class size. I'm not a big proponent of that. I think it backs districts into a corner if class sizes happen to be large for a year and the funds, there's no funds to add an extra section. One of the ones I found, just as an example, was Rocori. Rocori has a policy, a school board policy, that their grades 4, 5, and 6 should fall within the range of 26 to 29 students, which puts us right in line with where they're at. But they also say that because of financial restraints, it may not always be, they may not always be able to do that. And again, not comparing us to Minnetonka schools, just as an example, just solely as an example, the Minnetonka school website talks about their class sizes and how proud they are of those. And and that in their quote, research has little to do with class size at the upper elementary levels, and then it gives an example which happens to be the exact example that we're dealing with now. We currently have 86 students, and it says for next year, which would be this school year, one of their elementaries will have 86 students in 5th grade and push class sizes to 28 or 29. Class sizes will increase just because we're beginning with a larger group, and it would not be prudent to have 4 classes of 21 or 22 in grade 5. Now, I'm not saying that it would be irresponsible to have 4 sections, but in the grand scheme of things, as a whole and as an administrator, I had to weigh where we would benefit the most. Would we benefit from having smaller class sizes in kindergarten where those students are new to school and need that extra boost, or do we have 3 sections and then a class of 21 and 23 in 5th grade? And so that was the decision, and I fully understand that there is disagreement in that with some parents. But as an administrator, I try to make decisions based on, looking at a number of factors, and then those decisions need to be based on how I feel they will benefit the school as a whole. And I'm a parent. Certainly there are times when I see things solely through a parent's eyes. There are times when I need to look at things through the eyes of all of the children in our school and what I think would be the best use of our staff at that time. So that's really all I have, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay, if nothing additional, we will move on. Approve and correct minutes from the June 24th, 2014 regular board meeting, the July 1st special board meeting, and the July 7th special board meeting. My assumption is we could probably do that all at once instead of 3. That'd be appropriate.
Everybody's okay with all of them.
If everybody's okay with it. Motion by Deb, second by David. Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Then we're on the financial reports, treasurer's report, and monthly balance sheet. Just a comment, when I looked at this report, it was kind of nice for me when you glance through and you start looking, when we start to get towards the end of the year, and our full extent of dollars have been allocated, and in all the different categories, how close to budget we are holding almost everywhere. I did make a call today. Do you mind if I go ahead, Bob?
Oh, absolutely.
I did make a call on sites and buildings. You see that's a high percentage. And then above it is pupil support. And it was explained to me that minus $45,000 will be allocated to this other. They just have to figure out the mileage allocation.
It's a special ed transportation piece. The money's in the budget already, but the way we do it shows up as that, and then we reallocate the dollars. So in essence, it is covered. We're not minus 44 below budget or in the whole budget.
There's any more comments? Now I'll make a motion that we approve the financial reports.
Second.
Second by, is it Deb? Mark? Okay, second by Mark. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Okay, audit approval of bills.
I had the opportunity this afternoon to come in the district office and audit the additional June bills and the entire July bills. Not very much, but I would recommend approval of those bills as written.
Okay, we have a motion by Mark,
Second.
and we have a second by David. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, consent agenda. Number 1, review and consider approval for participation in the state and national school lunch program for the 2014-15 school year.
This is an every year type of
If
thing.
it's on the consent agenda.
Do you want to do it all at
We
once?
can do it all at once.
Okay.
Unless somebody wants to take something out.
Yeah, you should ask if there's anything that someone wants to take off and suggest, and then we can.
Okay, anybody have anything that they would like to take off?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I'll second.
Okay, motion by David to approve the condensed agenda, second by Deb. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Okay, then we are on to business. And review and consider approval of fee schedule for the 2014-2015 school year.
You have a copy of the fee schedule in, as Exhibit A. Most of the schedule itself has remained the same. Admissions have remained the same. After talking with Max, he did not want to make any changes. Activity tasks is the same. Athletic participation fees the same. Non-athletic participation fees the same. There was a little discussion that I think we'll need to continue about whether or not you want to look at something where there's a maximum between athletic and academic fees. Right now, there's not. There's a maximum for the athletic fees, but sometimes families are involved very much in both of those. So it might be something that we want to discuss in the future on whether that's something that we want to kind of look at and say there's a maximum if they're in athletics or in academic type of or non-athletic participation. Student parking has remained the same. Meals, we did raise, again, 10 cents. We need to keep moving up. It's really required for us at this point. New thing is that now with the state, for all elementary students that are on reduced, it's also free. They're covering the cost of that, so that's a new piece now. So, you know, it's always reduced a certain amount, and then free was free. But now all reduced lunches in elementary are also being paid for by the state. And will be an increase. That's also in middle school, in addition to that. Lunch fees, but for the adult level, we left the same. At least we don't get the information on our adult fees until much later in the year. In fact, this year, everything's been behind. We haven't seen much information on all of this. But we do think by leaving it the same, it will still meet the standards that we need to meet. So we did leave that where it's at. Breakfast fees, I think also remain the same. Again, all kindergarten and free and reduced price students now will get free breakfast. So any kindergarten student or those aren't free and reduced are also getting paid for by the state. And all reduced price students as far as breakfast for middle school and high school is also being paid for by the state. The rest remains the same. Any questions so far on any of this?
Or maybe this is more for Max, because we've had the prices for all of our athletics for a long time. How do we compare to other districts right now? Have you done research yet on that? I'm sure you
Yeah, I can get you that information. Basically, we're right in the middle of the fees. We're higher than Eden Valley charges and cheaper than New London, and right in the middle of that. If you, and I don't know if that's how our fees, I didn't establish the prices. They've been the same, you're right, but we're not higher than quite a few districts, but we're also not lower than all of them either. So
Like I said, it's just been like this
Yeah.
forever, and I was just.
And that's part of the discussion.
Right or not?
Yeah, that's part of the discussion that I had also with Mr. Hewitt, is that there are districts around us that don't charge, you know, for instance, I think off the top of my head, it's 110 or 130 to play a sport in New London Spicer, but it might be 55 or 45 or 50 or something like that in Eden Valley. So do we want to raise ours when one, you know,
No, I was just wondering, because it's been so stagnant for so many years, I just wanted to know if we did that comparison. I knew we did, but not like I want to pay any more money, but
yeah.
I know I want to be also
Yeah.
studious.
Okay, any other questions so far? Then we get to school district meal allowances. We did leave that the same. We might want to look at least next year, look at raising that a little bit, and also the mileage. We haven't done much with that, but I did leave it the same, at least at this point. Student athletic bus out-of-town activities remain the same. The next ones, we've made some change. Substitute teachers, we are comparable to all the other districts in regards to the substitute teachers, so that did remain the same. But all the rest of them, except for the band and instrumental rental fee, we did leave that same. They did not recommend to me that that goes up. But for the substitute clerical, custodian, paraprofessional, food service, and van drivers, we did raise that up by 50 cents. To tell you the truth, we're low in most of those areas, and I did contemplate going even to $1 of raising those. I think we would certainly have a better opportunity to get subs in all those areas if we were to do that. But I did just go up 50 cents, at least for now, as the minimum rate. Rate goes up, you know, we're gonna have to start raising this anyway, but there will come a time when we will be paying our people minimum rate. And that's all we'll be paying them. Even if we continue to go up 50 cents next year and 50 cents the year after that, we'll just be at the minimum wages. So just be aware that there could be coming down the road a recommendation for me that we really do need to put a little bit more money into this area. But I did have a lot of discussion about whether we needed to do it this year or not, but we raised it by 50 cents in those areas, and we'll see how it goes. Like, quite truthfully, if we have trouble finding people, you'll probably hear me come back and say, we might have to do something with this if we can't get subs. And I also did the same with what we're doing for our call sub, our sub caller. We believe that we found a staff member. We'll have to open it, but we think that there's some interest in by some of our staff to possibly do the calling for the subs. There are other options out there, but they are a little more costly if we go that way. So if I can find a staff member or somebody who's willing to do it, it's only 1 hour a day, so there's not going to be a lot of people that will jump at that, but we're hoping to find somebody for that piece. But I did raise that also by 50 cents to kind of even it all out. Questions on that?
Okay, we're on a business item, if the public has anything to say on this one. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the fee schedule for 2014-15 school year.
Second.
Second by Deb. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Review and consider approval of our membership with the Minnesota School Board Association for the 2014-15 school year.
Minnesota School Board has been a great association to belong to. I think most of you went to the, well, in fact, all of you have gone to a number of the trainings. We also get a benefit with our policies and a number of other things. I would certainly recommend that we continue with that organization.
I have a motion by Kella,
Second.
a second by Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Number 3, review and consider approval of the 2014-15 student parent handbook of athletic activities.
You have a copy in your folder, and I'll turn over to Max.
Yeah, I don't know if you have any questions as you look at it. To be honest, they're mostly date changes as well as just some language from
Is your
like,
presentation somewhat long because I don't have you come down here, or you're kind of short?
depends on how many questions you have. I can come down there.
Maybe should I come down here because people are listening at home and then they can hear your comments. Sorry about that, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
This particular handbook was redone extensively in
12-13 school year. It served us very well. And so basically date changes as well as a language such as activities coordinator to activities director, just to be current with the titles. I'm not sure if you're paging through it. I can explain any of it. I don't know if you have, stop me if you have any questions. But basically page 2, being our philosophy, what our objectives are. Obviously we always, are striving, and the one thing people focus on potentially is winning, but you see, our goals and why we offer. We have a philosophy for each level of play. So you see 7th and 8th grade, obviously our playing time and what we're trying to accomplish at the different levels are different. Our fee schedule as well as policies just that affect competition as far as forms and things like that are on page 3. Page 4 discusses items that need to be done prior to practice. Some of that is policy for the state high school league, also just for liability standpoint. Just so everybody understands, maybe you know or you don't, I deal with this stuff all the time, so I assume people know things, but state high school league eligibility form has to be filled out on a yearly basis by everybody that participates in fine arts or athletics. And then a sports health questionnaire, sports qualifying physical has to be every 3rd year, or the grades 7th and grades 10 for athletes, not necessarily for fine arts. State high school league participation rules are in there. You can see the categories of activities of category 1 and category 2. Basically, some of the stuff that we do is affects classroom grades. For instance, choir and band may do performances or competitions that their grade is tied to it, so our policy doesn't hinder somebody from performing on that based on an eligibility or something like that, because it is going to affect their classroom grade. Extracurricular activities that are outside of the classroom, those eligibilities would be affected by any rule violation. Leadership positions, that's reworked a couple years ago. No changes to that. You can see the extracurricular eligibility rules for so on and so forth. You see the academic eligibility. Just one thing to note, the only sport season that's different than any other is the fall season, because they start before school. So our school has a policy, if somebody would fail in the spring, that they would be ineligible for 2 weeks in the fall instead of until mid-quarter. If you fail in the first quarter, you're ineligible till mid-quarter of the second quarter. Part of that is because you start beforehand. Some schools don't carry over the spring, or from the spring to the fall, ours does. Academics is one thing that the school has a choice on. The state high school league rule is that you have to be making adequate progress to graduation. So they don't say if you fail a class, you're ineligible. That's up to each individual school district to determine what is adequate progress towards graduation. Is basically up to the policy that you guys would approve, and then administration would enforce. But it's important to note that the Vikings built a new stadium actually next year in the fall of 2015. The football team will have played I'd have to look at my calendar. We'll have played 2 games, I believe, before Labor Day, whereas now we'll play 1. So, for instance, if it was mid-quarter like everybody else, somebody that would fail a class in the spring could potentially sit out over 75% of the season. And so that's what, obviously we want to have ramifications for people to be accountable, but at the same time we want to be fair to our students so that they are able to participate and go forward. That's not a change either, that's been in place. You see the extracurricular participation attendance policy on page 6. One of the things that is unique is that if an activity bus would return to town after midnight, there would be an automatic excusal and no penalty for attendance for the exact number of hours. So if it would be after midnight, they would be able to miss the first hour of school without any penalty. If it would be after 1 o'clock, the first 2 hours. We do have some buses that get back later. In particular, on occasion, wrestling and hockey would have further trips. It's basically doesn't happen with gymnastics or basketball. They play much closer. Some of that has to do with just the teams and the offerings and where we have to go to play. Transportation policy, that's in there. And it's, enforced to the best of our abilities, and our coaches do a good job of that. Basically, sometimes we have to upset people and tell them that we just can't let students go with anybody, just so that we know that. And I think that's straightforward there. And then the last page is just a parent-coach relationship, and we have a chain of command and a policy or guidelines to follow if there's any conflict. Obviously, parents are a great asset and very, very much invested in order to make our programs work, and so we want to work with them and help set up. This has been a great tool. There is issues that come up from time to time, and we're able to work those out, and this helps all parties involved have a process to follow to go through, and it's been beneficial. Again, this handbook has served us very well for the past few years, and so at this point in time, I don't see any real need. I know one thing that we're going to discuss as a conference athletic directors is some schools may have like social media policies and things like that, but most of that goes directly just to the overall school and not just athletes in particular. So, does anybody have any questions regarding this?
David has a motion to approve the student parent handbook, seconded by Deb. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Okay, review and consider approval of our membership with the ERDC for the 2014-15 school year.
They really do help us considerably with our finance, payments, and training. I would absolutely recommend that we.
A motion by Mark. I'll make a second by Bruce. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Review and consider approval of resolution for membership in the Minnesota State High School League for the 2014-15 school year.
So moved.
I have a motion by Cheryl,
Second.
I have a second by Deb, and this is a resolution, so our practice is a roll call vote.
All right, Kella? Aye. Mark?
Aye.
Deb?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Okay, review and consider approval of our membership with the Schools for Equity and Education, SEE, for the 2014-15 school year.
This organization has been helpful to the district as far as finance and other things, although their big push to get the equity piece taken care of, at least for the donor hole districts, didn't help us much because we're one of the few districts that are right square in the middle. They have been helpful in other years of helping schools with the financial piece and pushing hard for us to get the funding that we should be getting. So I would recommend, I have found this organization really useful, and I think they're helpful. Sometimes that isn't apparent because they do a lot of the work with our legislatures.
Yeah, if you want to talk to somebody down there and get hold of them from C and L.
So I would certainly recommend that we continue and support this organization. They certainly support us.
So moved.
We have a motion by Deb,
Second.
we have a second by Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Review and consider approval of Paynesville Area Public Schools Local Literacy Plan.
I'll turn that over to Dave.
This is a plan that we've had for a few years, and it's, the state requires.
You mind coming down here again? Or is this just a short one?
Real quick.
Okay.
The state requires that each school district have a K-3 literacy plan. Our literacy plan covers K-5, and it's a plan that is tied to the Reading Well by Third Grade initiative, and it's tied to money on, we get a certain amount of money for
how well our third grade students do on the reading MCAs. And so this is a plan that is on the website each year, and so once it's gone through tonight, then I'll have Matt update it. Not a lot of changes. It just gives the information on what we do for interventions for all of our students and things like that. And then there's a data piece that gets submitted to the Department of Ed, and that's already been submitted. So
They've put a lot of time putting it in, they've taken a lot of time and effort putting that plan together. That was 2-3 years ago.
I think this will be the third year that we have this thing.
So we have a motion by David,
Second.
a second by Kella. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Review and consider approval to change date or time of August 12th, 2014 school board meeting.
Yeah, we need to change the date or the time of the August 12th, just because there's a primary election time, and we missed it originally on our calendar. So last time we had this, we moved it forward. You can't do anything between the hour 6 and 8. So if we're going to move it forward, we need to move forward far enough so that we can make sure that we get the meeting done, or we can pick another date for the meeting. But we can't have it at 6:30 on that date.
Will it be done by 6?
Has to be done by 6. If we're not done by 6, we'd have to wait to finish that meeting.
Thoughts?
Or we start having 8?
You could have the meeting at 8, correct? 8:01.
That makes sense.
I think earlier would be,
Yeah, tougher.
yeah.
Well, we have a lot of areas that we should cut it off halfway.
Let's go to 8:01.
Let's go to 8:01.
Okay, do you want a motion accordingly, Bob?
I
You have it kind of written as you're looking for a motion?
Yeah, I don't know if we, it probably wouldn't hurt to have.
I wasn't sure. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Yeah.
Motion by Deb,
Second.
second by Cheryl. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Passed. Review and consider approval of our membership with Resource Training and Solutions for the 2014-15 school year.
As the board remembers, I had a discussion about eliminating this particular organization. They have been helpful, but really with the budget cuts and stuff, I would have made this as one of my budget cuts this year. I found out that there is a state law that says I have to give them 1 year's notice. I have to notify them by February. There's really 3 main things that we get from them. We don't run our insurance through them like a lot of school districts do. We get some staff recognition events, and that there is a student recognition piece. Now, if we don't belong to them, we will lose those. And there's, I think, one academic competition too, and we're seeing if there's a way to work around that. I can't believe they can keep us out of it just because we don't belong to their group. But most likely you will hear me, unless the board has some strong feelings on this, you will hear me say that it's before February, and I'm informing them that we will no longer be a part of that group. I just think that right now, with our budget the way it is, we just don't get the benefits that we would need. We can still go to some of their training. There is an additional cost. It's a minimal cost. Now, if they were to change that philosophy and raise it considerably, but it's $10, $15 usually, if you go to the training, you don't belong to Resource. So I think really this is an area that we could reduce. But for now, I'm recommending that we do it because I have a state law that says I have to.
Will I keep you out of jail? I'll make a motion.
Have a motion by Deb,
Second.
second by Kella. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Just for everybody, this is business items. There is public comment at each one, so if you have something to say, just wave your hand or something. We have a series of those going through. Policy actually says that the chairperson may ask for public comment, but we try to do it all the time. So, and I was remiss in bringing it up 7 times. Number 10, review and consider approval of resolution to authorize administration to submit document for review and comment.
is what the resolution says, be it resolved by the school board of Independent School District 741 to authorize administration to submit a document for review and comment for proposed facility projects and capital project levy. It's really letting the state know that you are aware that we're looking at doing a project. It doesn't bind us to anything at this particular time. It is a requirement that we need to do. We could wait later, but really as we're moving forward with our facility project, it would be nice to continue to get these pieces done on a timely manner.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mark, second by Lou. Any further discussion? Anybody in the public? Remember this time? This is a resolution, so we have to have a roll call.
Mark?
Aye.
Deb?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Helen? Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, number 11.
Number 11, review and discuss information pertaining to questions that will appear on the November 4th, 2014 election ballot.
I really don't need a motion here, what I really need is some guidance. So if there is a lot of conflict on this one, we'll have to discuss where to go from there. It's really about the fact that on the first meeting in August, we need to have our questions set for the ballot. All right, so because of that, right now there are 3 basic pieces that we've looked at as part of the facility project. One is what I call the Yule piece, although there's a lot more pieces that are part of it, but it's the piece that has the roofing projects, all the Yule projects are in there, the carpet is a number of different things, some technologies in there. That would be one project that I would say. We also have a technology levy that's come from the facilities group that said, you know, a technology piece, and then we also have the gym piece. So the board could decide to put all 3 of those as separate questions on the ballot. They could decide to take all 3 of those and combine them into one question on the ballot. I think the facility, there's been discussion, and I did talk with a few of the members today, that their recommendation is that you combine the Yule project and the technology levy into one question. And the other discussion is that the gym piece would be the second question, but the other piece that the facility committee really talked about, and we do have these members who here, we talked about was that our feeling was that first question would really be an important one, and we discussed then the first question has to pass in order for the second question to count. Because of the August deadline, I do need some guidance from the board on how we're going to frame those questions. I don't need to have, I think, necessarily the exact amounts right now, but we do have a lawyer that works specifically with elections that helps to make sure that we meet all of the guidelines for what that question must have. And I would certainly like to, because of the tight schedule, start to work with that person to start putting the questions together. So I think it's as a point of discussion on what the board's wishes are, on what direction we want to go with the questions. So that's the kind of guidance that I'm looking for right now from the board.
From the facility side, it was, in our conversation, it was getting the roofs done, getting the system back together, getting this updated. It included the technology report, and then the gymnasium came. And so just what Bob said was the discussion that we had. I have talked to some people, if you don't mind if I just tell you. There's conversation, and some of it relates a little bit to when I went to some of the meetings on resolutions at the School Board Association meeting, that sometimes 2-question referendums, they don't pass. Sometimes the second one doesn't pass, but it's historically a fairly large percentage. I know it came up at a little bit on the facility meetings, and we addressed that. But I asked an individual just before I came in here, not anywhere close to us here, and I said, well, what do you think? And his comment to me was, well, I think the first one will pass and the second one will fail. Just information for people. But I think we need to kind of open up, and we need to have actually a dialogue about everybody's thoughts to that. It's not that the gymnasium is not important. But the first one is really important also. I hate to keep talking, but when I look at it, I look at the first one having to do with technology that Bob has put together, because he kind of helped us with that technology part, and what we put together. A lot of that's based upon scholastics for the kids. That's where I would classify that. The second one has to do with programs that are available to the kids. So it's not that one is more important than the other, but we're kind of satisfying a multi-need. The paper's report, and if you look at the titles of the last articles that come out, plus tomorrow, it starts with gym. Okay, so does this convert totally to a gym project? When we have worked really hard for scholastics to be involved with our roofs and heat, then I'll just be quiet.
I guess that's where I'm at too, is that the actual facilities project was about getting this facility that we already have up better and running better, and then trying to get us caught up with the technology. I think I don't know. It's like I said, the thing on the getting the facilities and then the technology, we absolutely have to do. We don't have any choice, or else we start cutting off limbs next year, or I don't know what we do. So but at the same time, we sat and listened to these guys talk about the facility, the gym part of it, the community center. I think the paper does us a disservice by referring to it the way that it does, but
I think from what I've seen all along, the facility committee and the conversations that have been happening has been that there'd be two questions. The UO project and the technology project. But I don't know if it's as clear cut as that, especially after that last community meeting. I really saw a lot of momentum for the gym, and I really do think that if the gym is the second question, it's going to fail. I really do. And I think we'd be kind of defeating the momentum that we have right now on that project. I know that Eden Valley finally got their gym built, but they defeated it. They had a second and third question twice, and it failed both times. So there's a lot of comments that they, a lot of good comments, investing in the community, investing in your school. You know, how do you, to me, you know, if you have that facility, that will enhance the rest of the school too. You know, we'll get kids, you know, we'll get people to town, businesses will move to town. It's all important. So I was kind of, you know, just assumed the whole time that we go two questions, but I really don't know that that's the right thing to do now. You know, I guess I'd like maybe for everyone just to think about it for a couple of weeks or
Well, we won't have a lot of time. One recommendation that I will bring to the board, I think now is probably as good a time, just because I'll bring it up during my reports and probably ask you so you can kind of think about this. I'd like to pull the facility group back together on the 23rd, okay? Because at that point, R.A. Morton will have quite a bit of information for us. That's what they're telling me. So I'd like to have the facilities committee meet then, take a look at what they're presenting, kind of finalize what they're going to recommend to the board as their final project, and then the board would get that on a special board meeting on the 28th. So it would mean one meeting, but then you would get all that information. But then you're really coming down to the wire. At that point, you really do need to make decisions. I can certainly talk with our attorney that we work with as far as the questions and ask him, you know, what his drop-down deadline is. But sooner or later, and he may find that it's not that hard to put the questions together and that he doesn't need very much time. But eventually that, you know, we've got to have an answer to that question, because if it's one question, that's one thing. If it's two questions, dependent upon the other, that's a completely different thing. So you have probably a little bit of time. What I don't have an answer for you is whether or not, if we make the decision on the 28th, whether there will be any issues having the questions ready for that first board meeting in August, because you really do need to have those questions ready for the ballot at that time.
Other thoughts? Do you mind? Go ahead.
Well, again, I had kind of the same notion that Dave had, that, we were gonna go into it two distinct questions. But, the more that I ponder it and think about it and stuff like that, it is the community that we're looking at for support. And the community came down in force. There was quite a few of them here that said, you know what, we want this year, we need this year to keep on progressing. And if we don't, what's gonna happen? Okay, we get maybe a couple new roofs, we get a couple of technology, and the kids aren't staying here because they want more, or parents want more. So we have this technology and this extra stuff, but to who is it gonna benefit, So I still think at the end of the day, we have to put a package together that makes sense for everybody and come out with a question and say, this is what we really want. Because even today, I had a conversation with somebody talking about the finances. And, we passed that $723 per student, and they thought that was gonna solve a lot of problems with us. That's what they really thought. But it's actually the opposite. It band-aided us for a while to get us through, but reality, we still need resources, we still need things for this district, and if we keep on shorting ourselves every time we debate about what we should do or shouldn't do, we're gonna get farther and farther behind. And I think we talked about extra gyms for years. We've talked about, when the Army came up, they thought, oh, this would be a great opportunity for more baseball fields or something for the kids, just to enhance the programs that we are offering right now and make it attractable for kids. And, with some help by some of the people in the community, and said, you know what, this is what we would really like. And to push for it, now we can stand behind it as a community and say, you know what, this is really what I think we would need to make it a better place for our kids, for our future kids that are coming in. And if it fails, well, guess what? We're gonna have to go back at it again. We just heard that Eden Valley, they tried many times to get that through, and they finally got it through. And it's just like anything else. You keep on putting your foot forward and try, especially if you know that it is for the kids and it is for the community, and we have to try something to get kids excited about staying here.
I have a comment. I'm agreeing with you about the need for the gym. My fear is that we brought it up. The community hasn't heard this conversation very long about the gym. They've heard about our facilities issues. They've heard about our technology woes. I think that is more, it is more possible that will pass. I think if we piggyback on the gym at this point being so new, I'm afraid nothing's going to pass, and then we're going to be really in a pickle. So maybe we need to just keep plugging forward, but I don't know that we should have one question. I'm not convinced of that.
I am not either, but, I guess we're just gonna have to stick on to one thing and decide whether we should do a one question or a two question. It's still gonna be voted on by the public. They're still gonna decide whether it's gonna be,
But it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
In that.
But today even, I had another conversation with somebody else about the stadium here. They don't know what kind of money was raised by public people. They're just thinking that this is coming up and, what not to jump on the bandwagon when somebody has put something like that forth. This is gonna be a very attractive community center, the school, for future kids, and they'll wanna come and play at these ball fields. But we also still need other parts to fill in some of those gaps. And I think there's community members that are eager to do that. We just have to give them the opportunity.
But it also has to be sold to the community.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
convincing.
Yep, definitely. Yep.
And I think we're close, we're on the threshold of convincing them about our facility
Mhm.
and technology, but I'm not sure we've convinced them yet about the gym.
Yeah,
I think
don't-
it's just so new.
I don't know.
We've talked a lot about, how do we sell this district, how do we grow the district? You know, and somebody in the,
Talked about it up here.
Kelly, we talked a lot about, growing this district, how do we become attractive to compete? How do we compete with these surrounding school districts? And there was a comment made in the section that night about, we can have the best technology and the best teacher, the best math teacher in the world here, and that doesn't attract it. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs probably. I think I read something that the highest paid public employee in 28 states is the college football coach. Sports is what attracts people, and it's not necessarily right, but that's the reality of it. And, if we really, Bruce talks about it all the time, how do we grow this district? And I just feel that if you don't include this, if you put a separate question on this, it's going to fail, and we just won't get a chance to bring it back. We've got a whole bunch of people out there with momentum that are willing to really sell all the product. And I'm not dismissing the technology and the building needs, because those are there. But I just think that, it's not going to happen with two questions. That we really, that's what's going to compete with New London and Belgrade and Corey and Eden Valley. All these people have wonderful facilities, and we need to do it. And I just don't know if it's going to get done another way.
Yeah, I don't know which way it's going to go either, but I'm worried that if we do piggyback them, that we'll lose the technology of the old fixes and the roofing. Those we do need, definitely. I would really love to see that gym go up. I'm all for it. I think it would be wonderful in addition to the school, to the community. But I'm really worried that if we piggyback them, that there may be a faction that will come out to defeat it. I'd like to hear some more community members and get some more input and really listen to what's out there.
We're running out of time.
I know.
We have to make some decisions
That's the
pretty
tough
soon.
part, but that's why I'm kind of thinking too that we need two questions.
The only flip side of that is if you do have a lot of this momentum of these people that are really pushing it, they might say, well, you're not listening to me,
Yeah.
so then why should I vote for technology and the other stuff?
Well, that's shooting yourself in the foot.
I know it is, but I'm just talking the way people rationalize anything with anything, you know what I'm saying? Everybody has a different agenda, everybody has their own mind, what they think would be great. And, like I said,
I myself don't have any indication from anybody that that group would push less with two questions, because I think that's kind of what they know, or more or less with one. I have nobody saying from that group, I think it's kind of a topic we need to talk about, but I've not heard anybody that's asked for the single question. But we as a school district have to be looking at all options that are out there.
and we have to also present to them on what is the reality for when people go out for a two-question vote versus the one question. They might not even have any idea what that means.
Yeah.
They'll go back and say, if we say, 90% of the two questions fail. They aren't gonna have, they won't want the two questions then. So that's information too. And I don't know exactly what the percentages are.
I think it's around 70.
70%.
75, yeah.
That
And
fails.
there's a lot of factors. We don't know if they have a team behind the second project like we have, because we saw the team that's gonna push it. We don't know the parts of it, but that's just straight statistics.
And just think when you can show at the end of the day, when you're spending the money, that you can see something, it's huge. They're not gonna see anything when they're voting for the $2 million or $1.8 million project, they're not going to see anything.
That could be the prize that passes the other parts.
Yeah.
It could be, yeah. You see something, excites something exciting, and I think that's what happened in Eden Valley when you finally got passed.
Well, I know that when we talked about it in the facility meetings, there was just no question about something failing. This is kind of new discussion here, but we've got to look at the numbers. We just assumed that we would sell the first one and sell the second one all at the same time, with the assumption both would pass. And, but we still have statistical things that come into that factor, and you kind of, we just need to have a discussion about it. Would the board mind if I include the public here, because this is a public comment? Alright, we got Gene up there, Dick, go ahead.
Well, I have a question on how soon will we know, or can we know, like approximate cost per, say, $100,000 house? That I can't relate to 5 million. It costs me an extra 100, whatever that number is. I can relate to that. I gotta think of the public is
The
like.
projections are pretty close to what I handed out at the facility committee. So those sheets that I've given out that have that, you can get yourself a pretty good estimate on that.
Can I got it with me?
Yeah.
If you
Now,
don't
will
mind.
that be,
I'm on this.
well, okay, our debt is falling the next, what, 4 or 5 years?
2020.
Those projections were made with wraparound financing.
Okay.
It included the fact that we would lose, if we pay a certain amount, we keep the thing down.
Yeah. Okay.
We wouldn't pay as much upfront on the new project. We continue to pay the main part of what we're doing, paying off now. But then as soon as those are done, then that same money would go to the new project then. But that enables you to keep the payments down to a certain degree.
What is that?
So, well, the estimate looks like it's on $725,000, exactly the way we're looking looking at this $150,000 house, $85, a $200,000 house, $122.
With the $7 million project?
With $7 million project.
Does that include the levy with?
Well, it said the
technology?
annual capital project levy, bond issue, wraparound, existing debt. So if we take like the 1.9 plus an estimate of maybe 5 million for the other, so I'm guessing that's where this came from.
That'd be 7, but then you also have the levy.
But the levy is in there too. The annual capital project levy,
As
that's
long
in
as you've
there
added
too.
them both together.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I just took the total at the end. I was cheating on it, so I didn't have to strain my mind. Then on the 1.9 million with the capital levy project, it's $74. So you're looking at $46, $74, $48 difference on a $150,000 house
A year.
a year.
That's my tool.
Well, I think it helps a fair amount when we look at the existing debt being paid off relatively quickly. Because if you look at this whole project, we're talking about November. Within a year, we are now 4 years from all the debt being paid off that's existing right now. And this would be the only debt. I'm sure that's having, I don't know how they come up with this, but I'm sure that has an effect on it.
That's slightly more than having one student in one sport.
Yeah, but in reality, it also affects people that don't have somebody here. And that's a hard thing to overcome. You know, we get to where we're at an age we don't have anybody in the school system, but thank goodness for all the people, when those people were in school that were in the same position, were involved in their school systems at that time. It's just a reality. Yes, we'd like to get out of it, but it was just, it's just kind of interesting in
It's not a
numbers.
huge amount of dollar amount, you know,
Yeah.
for that, so.
And it's like all the others, and I can share this, it was just a print that I made of it, but it had the commercial on there, it had agricultural homestead at $1 million. Total was $220 a year. Non-agricultural homestead was 82 cents an acre at $2,000. Let's say the properties are $4,000 worth, $1.65. But commercial, because we also want to build the businesses, right? Part of our community is us, it's the businesses, everybody going. For $1 million commercial, I don't know where this comes from, I expect it's the market value of the buildings, would you say? So $1 million is $791. Now, if we move forward to the 7 million, the commercial on $1 million goes to 1305 from 791. The agricultural homestead at $1 million is 363, and go from 220. The property acreage, if we estimated $4,000 an acre, $1.65 to 271. And seasonal recreational residential, let's pull 250, is that a reasonable number? $170 or $170 to 103 in a year. Kind of surprised me when I saw it actually, but I'm convinced it was because we have that other debt paid off fairly quickly in this whole process. So we're not financing just interest in watching this thing grow 6, 7, 8 years down the road.
And the taxes did go down $25 to $30 with the change, the way that it's in the state.
We were in the middle of your comments and I just was doing this, I didn't mean to.
Well, I think that, well, my comment from the facility committee is, UHL tech roof, if you want to say that's number one, yeah, absolutely have to have that. And the good news is I don't have to vote, you people do. I mean, I don't have to answer if you put the gyms with it or not. It's a concern because we just don't want to have the other fail.
Okay. Max, I didn't mean to say that all the rest of you weren't public speakers, so everybody can have a hand at this, or public comment people.
I think I can say from the facility committee, this discussion came up a little bit, and I brought it up. And the committee did vote to do 2 questions, the first pass and the second, just so the board is aware of that. That's what the committee did say. My personal opinion on that is, Kella says you have to go out and sell it. I think if you put 2 questions on, you sell it as the first question's a need and the second question's not a need. That's how I think you've just sold it as no. That's why I brought it up, because that's what I think when, just as a community member, if there's a question on there, this one's important and this one isn't. And so if I'm a supporter of the school, this is what they want, this is what they need. I have 3 kids, I give them what they need. Sometimes they get what they want, right? And that's kind of how I feel about it. So it's not an easy thing, because I also sit in the capital meetings and understand what not passing that first question would do with our 5-year budget. At the same time, sometimes I think, like, why offer a school if we're not going to be able to put what represents our community, and if that's the type of thing that our community wants to be, if we tell them that we just got that referendum for 723, and Mark mentioned that there's people that thought that was going to solve it. So if we do the first question and it passes, but really what our community wants and expects out of the school district is also the second question, then we sold them short. It's not an easy answer, I understand that. That's the perspective that I look at it, is it's our job as a facility committee to bring something that we believe is the best solution. We did, as a committee, say the second question, or 2 questions, and the first one had to pass.
Again, I was at that meeting when the vote was taken too, and just like, there's a lot of enthusiasm. We all know the first part of that. That's like, stop the bleeding. But the second one is give them the breath of air too. So we went with the 2 questions. There was no discussion about how often the second question fails, if I had thought about that. Or like how many of us sat there and after you said it about, and we all do that as people, well, whatever comes first, that's what they really need, and the second things, well, they can live without it for a while, but is that being fair to the whole project? If this is truly what, I had no idea that the gym situation had gotten as bad as it was. It's been a while since my kids were in school with you. So when you start looking at all the things that we've added, all the sports that have been added, I never gave any much thought to where they practice until I heard from the parents and the kids here in this meeting talking about using the elementary gym for real sports. Really? That's crazy. So I was at that meeting and I thought, this is great. We did 2 questions. We did the right thing. And now I'm sitting here going, boy, we sure missed the mark that night because we didn't talk enough about it.
We're interested in more comments. Would you chime in? Would you like?
I think that and I was here the other night for the community meeting, and I think we had a room full of one-sided support, and there's probably going to be more opposition to this in the community than you think. I think we're having discussions about things that I've never seen any research behind, that a gym is going to serve businesses and people to school. I've never seen anything that proves that. If that is really the mood of the community, they feel like this would be a great asset, then I think you can sell that and the second question will pass. Some random statistic about that second question fails this percentage of the time. You're right, it's a statistic. It can be manipulated either way. We don't know what we're being at. And if it's really the mood of the community that they think this is important, second question will pass. They think the community's been led to believe that it'll be 2 questions. I've been assured it will be 2 questions.
That's the other downside, is because I do think a lot of the facilities committee, well, we were there, we took the vote. If we try and put it in as 1 question, they're going to think we're trying to.
I wonder if
The single question never came up. Well,
No,
we had the
it wasn't really
discussion,
discussed.
but we had decided as a group and we were just latching on
the
and.
psychology of a question.
Mhm.
But then playing kind of the devil's advocate, that was our recommendation as a facilities committee. You still have the power to change that. And the real question is, will each one of you try to go out and sell that? It's not the superintendent's job by himself. You can't do it. You know, I think every board member has to be involved.
I always told my kids to set believable goals. Set them high, but not so high that they can't be reached. I think we can get this gym passed if we work at it. Because I think we, as a community, really do want it. But we need to work at it, we need to get the word out, and we need to really talk about it. So everybody knows what it is and what we need. And everybody has to do that. Not just, we're only 7. We need to get the word out and get everybody talking. And I think we can pass it, either at 1 or 2 questions.
Michelle, would you like to chime in? It's up to you. Do you have any thoughts?
I wasn't part of the committee and I had nothing preconceived in my head about a 2-question thing. Just coming in as a voter, and I'm a grandma, so I don't have to, I mean, it's my grandkids in school, but I still would, I would vote yes, but I'm thinking that I would look at it as, well, they really need this, and, it's good enough to wait on the other. I might think that. I mean, I can understand why people would think that. So possibly putting it all together might be the way to go, but that's where you're just looking at it from a voter standpoint and going in and looking at the ballot and knowing how, just listening to how people perceive things. And I think it makes a big difference if they actually have kids as students, and I think that's a sad thing. You know, 'cause I think we, as a community, we need to support the school rather than just, well, my kids are out of school, you know, who cares, or whatever. But I do hear a lot of that, you know, well, they have all this, you know, like this other gentleman said, well, they've already got that, you know, did that solve anything, you know, what? You know, and then a lot of people just go with that perception and they don't really seek out all the information, they don't really get involved to ask the questions and get the information. A lot, you know, they show up on election night and it's all about the officials on the ballot, not, you know.
It's all what you moved that day.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
When we went out for the, I wasn't on the board, but when we went out for the auditorium, or the, yeah, auditorium fitness center. I mean, that was a big, was there a 2-question there, or was it just
No,
one question?
no, just one.
Just one question. And that, you know, and I always go back to that because I remember I was a young father coming into this community, and they had this here, and we made a pact that we would vote, whatever the school needs, we'll vote for it, and so on and so forth, whether that's right, wrong, or difference, but that's what we did. And I know, talking to a lot of people over the course of the years about the auditorium, and they say, well, I never really voted for it because I don't see what there's any sense to it. But it's ironic how you go back to those people many years later and talk to them about the auditorium.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, wow. But at the time, I remember the whole atmosphere of saying, what does Paynesville need a stupid auditorium for? Who's gonna put on plays? Who's gonna go to these things? And now look at it. It's just phenomenal. And I don't think there's anybody could have ever dreamed that it was really a need. There was actually, because people did
We did dream.
push it.
Build it.
We pushed it. But again, it was like this year group with the auditorium was kind of similar to the group that was pushing the
And the
auditorium.
fitness centers, they
How
got
many
more like
times
this, they
did it
got
take
because.
For that to pass.
No, that wasn't.
one time.
Yeah, one
Oh,
time.
yeah.
There was actually 3 parts to that, supposed to be. And then it whittled down to 2,
Yeah.
and we put it out as one vote.
What
The
else was out there?
auditorium and the fitness center, huh?
Was there a swimming pool as part of that at one
No,
point?
not a part of that.
That never came.
That was different room.
But there you go, there they were going to have 2 questions.
Wait, back up the bus, because when we first started, I wish Matt was here, because we did take a bus to different places to see
Yes.
how much
Yeah.
pools were and auditorium. Thank you, I forgot to. And the school that we went into to see their swimming pools, they asked how much it cost to, and we all went, because it was, I want to say it was like in the 80,000,
It was a lot to keep, upkeep the pool.
just for upkeep.
Maintain up.
And so then we had that whole conversation, like, would the city help, you know? No.
No.
But it was 3. I mean, all 3 of them were being considered at the same time. The pool was just the first one that got chopped, because when we saw that dollar amount, we could have worked on a bond to build it, but we've never been able to keep it
You would have been the only district with a pool.
an empty pool, because we couldn't afford the water, the chemicals and stuff, we couldn't afford that. We had to literally, the upkeep on the pool, we'd had a great big.
We'd have a volleyball court.
Something
Imagine
about
all the kids that would have come.
Does anybody recall a vote that you had on a referendum that failed?
We did, yeah. The middle school went down a couple
Yeah.
times.
Oh, yeah.
The school went down twice?
And way back when I first came, they had an auditorium issue. I think that went down. I think they were trying to
We
build
didn't
an
vote
auditorium.
on it.
We didn't vote on it, we were just trying to promote it, and it never got to that point.
Tried to promote it.
I just remember Alan Anderson coming to our house and designs.
There was.
Yeah, there was an auditorium with one
But
in the
it
middle
didn't go
school.
into vote.
There's a pool on that one too. The middle school was too, there was a pool on that one too, but that didn't.
Prior to the last operating referendum, there was a vote and 6 years ago or something like that to increase our current operating referendum, and that failed. At that time, I think our school had somewhere close to $1 million in surplus or whatever you want to say. So, but that last operating referendum did fail. I think the biggest question for you guys to decide whether it's one or two questions is exactly what Dick said, is are you gonna go out and sell it? You know, do you believe that both of those things are important and necessary for our school? And if that's the case, then it's one. And if you only really truly in your heart believe that one is important and the other is great if we get it and okay if we don't, then it's two questions. And that's really, it's tough to decide, but that's kind of what it is. Because if you believe that both of them are what we need, then it's one.
Well, I probably have to disagree with it just a little bit. It's gonna appear like that, but both of them have their merits. And I'm not absolutely sure that we can say that a two-question vote. So statistically, we have some issues, but I think we have to be aware that if our decision as a board is two questions, I, as part of the facility group, when the second part came up, I thought, my first thought was, wow, this is interesting. But I graduated from the school in 1975. And in 1970, when it was built, it was really nice. But we didn't have any girls' teams in anything. So right there, that doubles your capacity. So the middle school was built with one gymnasium, okay? Now, we also didn't have math in the community ed crew, which has I think created other issues. And when I look at it, I personally, I'll look at it as, is this for 11 members on the basketball team? Is it for somebody like that? I like to think that it's designed more for the masses of kids that are probably 9th grade and under, where your teams are 20, 24 kids, everybody plays, all of that kind of stuff. Parents are here regularly. I think it has a lot of merit on that. And so if they were two questions, the sale part of it for me would be the same as if it's one. But,
how can you say that if the first one has to pass in order for the second one to count? Because then you're saying that the first one is the most important.
well, but I have to say that when it comes to the roofs and fixing the system, I do think that is really important. That's probably the driver for that. I'm thinking the technology could sway a little bit there, but when I put the whole package together, one is fixing the heating system and more scholastic oriented. The other one is extracurricular oriented. But I think we can't forget community ed in this thing. We didn't have a community ed when I was a kid.
Because you're the ringleader for, we gotta build this community and get people in here. And how many times we had a facilities meeting, you had joked about it, because a lot of us are past our having kids days, and he's like, well, we gotta bring more kids into the school. Well, we can't help you with that one, but, and so this, and you keep calling it a gym, but it's so much more than a gym. That's a community center. If that's really gonna, and I know statistically I don't have any stats to back it, but you look around you and you don't see people flocking to falling down buildings, but build cities, towns that look like they're growing, that look like the people care, that look like they're involved with their with their schools, they grow. And that would be one way of showing that there with this community center, connecting us even more to this city.
When did the facility committee vote? That was before the community meeting, correct? About the one question, two questions. So what I'd like to do, is table this thing and then go talk you know, maybe get some more input from the facility committee and some other people, you know, in light of the, you know, that it's not an automatic thing for the board, and in light of the meeting that we had where there is a lot of momentum for this gym. Rather than vote on it tonight, I think we've, you know, discussed it well, and, you know, but I think we'd like to think about it for a little bit. It's a tough question. I mean, it's a very tough question. There's no question that there's technology needs, that there's building needs. But I think there's community needs as well. I think it's, you know, all of it together. So I'm going to make a motion to table it until, that would be the next time we can.
It would be the,
have to do a
if the board's
special
willing to
meeting.
go for a special meeting, it'd be on July 28th.
20 what?
28th.
And we'd be okay timeline-wise on that?
My first call tomorrow morning will be to our attorney that would work with us on the questions. It may not be as, I mean, he still has, we just have to have those questions ready for that first board meeting in August. They have to be ready at that time.
Yeah. So I don't feel that I'm ready to vote on that. I don't know if everybody else does.
I agree. Well, we have a motion to
I
table.
second that.
There is no, it's a discussion
Yeah,
item. There's no
it's a
vote.
discussion item. You don't have to table, you don't have to do anything at this particular point. I've certainly gotten enough that there's still more discussion to be made.
We have one more person from the public like to say something?
This is my observation, but I'm actually a little bit dumbfounded that we think these two questions are of equal importance. You have buildings that, when it rains and you walk down the hallway, there are garbage cans sitting all over the place. You gotta take care of those facilities. That's clearly the most important question to be asked here. And you're risking you're putting that at risk to build we can call it a community center, it's a gymnasium. That isn't,
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, because we had these urgent building needs 5 years ago back at Johnson Controls, and here we are. I mean, the sky hasn't fallen. You know, I just don't, it is, I mean, there's urgent needs here, no doubt about it. But I think that we've patched it with our last operating levy. We did a $700 instead of $1,100, which we really needed. We keep patching. Why don't we do it right and get facility up to where it should be, where we can attract kids, you know, we can attract young families, businesses. I really do think that's important here, so.
And I guess I'd be remiss because I have not weighed in here.
Why don't you go for it?
I think the board understands where I'm at with this. That first question, quite frankly, is the most important question. I think that the gym would be a great asset to the facility. I'm not debating that at all. But I also know what kind of needs we do need. And if we do put on one question and that does fail, then we will be struggling because we still will have those leaky roofs that we have not budgeted for next year. You all heard the comments on the roofing piece about putting good $100,000 worth of patching into our roofs now to get them to the point where we won't leak. We're still going to have those issues. So at least from my perspective, I do understand where everybody's coming from, but I guess I have to at least voice my opinion that I do worry that if you put it on one question and it fails, granted, we can go back in another year or even sooner if the board wants to do that. But you're still going to struggle until some of those other issues get in. The 723 was not enough. You know, this other piece of the facility does more than just help as far as getting some of the things repaired. It gives us the opportunity to move forward in a number of areas in capital, but also move some of my general fund dollars that we're using for capital things back into the capital, which also helps our general fund. And so I'll certainly, my opinion would be is that I would much rather see it 2 questions and just the way that the facility our committee had talked. I don't have an issue going back to the facility committee though and having discussion. We'll set the meeting for the 23rd. I've already kind of given them a heads up on the possibility of that meeting. And certainly don't have an issue bringing up all those points, because they're all valid points. I'm not debating that at all, but I also maybe look at it a little more simplistic as far as, boy, if it doesn't pass, then what?
You have to be optimistic, not a pessimist.
It reminds me.
Realist.
Yeah.
Realist.
I'll tell you what, if, no matter what the board decides, you will have a soup that will go out and sell it, no matter what. But I also know what the ramifications are if we don't pass it. And I do worry that we have holes in our roofs that we can look down into our building that we need to patch. You know, we patched them up and we kept it together, but if we have to wait and we don't repair those, that cost is not going to get less for us. You know, the roofs will continue to deteriorate, and then we have even a bigger issue, because now we'll have to be replacing it. So, you know, I think there's a lot to talk about, and certainly, like I said, there's a lot of discussion to be had. I think the timing will still be okay. If it's not, you'll get an email from me saying we need another special board meeting before the 29th. Or I'll see what I can do about moving Morton up faster to get some of those discussions made. I certainly think that they're both great projects. I wouldn't argue that a bit. I think there's great benefits to both of them.
Okay. Suggestion to table, anybody else have any thoughts there? We table it for right now?
You just have to leave it.
Okay.
Just move on.
But you need the directive to put it on this special board meeting.
It will be on the, because your timing, if the timing works okay, you'll need to make a decision on the 29th on what you're gonna do with this, because I will need to have, or 28th, I will need to have, the attorney working on that. It'll be a push, but I'll talk to the attorney firm and just make sure that our timing will work fine for the questions. And if I give them a head up, they may be able to start putting some things together on that piece.
Okay, so we'll move on. Now we'll go to personnel. Number 1, review and consider approval of resignation of Annette Stang, administrative assistant, effective July 16, 2014.
She's been a great addition to our school system. We need to lose her.
So moved.
Motion by Mark,
Second.
second by Lou. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say no. Review and consider approval of following van drivers for WCED summer school.
That's our special ed summer school program.
Okay. Motion to approve by Deb,
Second.
second by Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Okay, number 3 is on the second sheet. Review and consider approval of resignation of Jen Mrozik, van driver, effective July 10th, 2014.
Resignation, we may be looking for additional van drivers.
So moved.
Motion by Cheryl, second by Kella. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Okay, informational reports. Lou Storkamp, you're on.
West End meeting was held June 26th in Melrose. Most of the meeting was spent on personal issues, new contracts, resignations, new hires, and some of the contracts that were discussed were approved. And that was the district coordinator, executive director, alternative program administrator, principal. Doug Milloway has been with West Central Ed for 16 years, and he is retiring.
Semi-retired.
Well, yeah, I'll get to that. And he was done June 30th. But he will be returned to the district, to the West Central Ed district, but he'll be working under SASS, and that's School Administrative Specialty Service. So we signed two 1-year contracts, and he'll be there for an easier transition for the new executive director. I'm not real sure how many hours, but he won't be working for West Central Ed. He will be working for this SCSS.
Have they hired a new director?
Yeah, Glory, you know.
Oh.
And
She'll do a great job.
she's very,
What's her last name?
Phoebe.
Phoebe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had an opening for the Beacon teacher position, and no one applied for it, so they may just go on without that. When they think that the numbers, if they're not increasing anymore, they can get by. And the board approves the resignation of the school psychologist. Now, here's going to be a tough one. Hiring a psychologist will be tough because there's every 3 or 4 openings, there's one qualified person in the state. And the West Central Ed is on the lower end of the pay scale. And they don't have the incentives either, and they're sending people out trying to get more incentives. I don't know about the pay, they haven't really increased that at this point. And board discussed support staff handbook and approved it. The board discussed the summer school teacher pay adjustment, and the board approved the contract for the new social worker. And that's just part of it, but that's all I'm going to give. The next board meeting will be held in Albany. Instead of, by the way, Bob, did you know that?
No, I did not, so thank you.
It's opposed to Paynesville. They want to wait till January.
Good, good.
Over there.
Let them come in.
And that'll be September 15th. Any questions?
Okay, technology meeting,
Just to kind of bring the board up, we've been talking about our copiers and our printers and going to a decentralized piece where we don't necessarily have one person out making all the copies. That moved forward through the technology committee. We had both groups come in. There's 2 groups that are kind of left in there, Metro and Marco. The board or the committee, and I don't want to bring it up now, just because we're still making, I'm still making some reference calls about the one that the committee has kind of decided to go with. We want to make sure that it's not just about the dollars, that particular group that we're looking at can do what they're saying. So we are making a few calls at this time just to make sure. Once we do that, then we'll put in place, we'll be getting leasing really from the company, new photocopiers. They'll also be taking care of our printers. It's all for a fee, of course. It'll also give us the ability to track printing and do some other things to make sure that things are working well. So that's kind of where we're at. We spent the whole meeting just discussing that particular piece.
okay, you're next too again.
Just a few things. Charles Crowless has been the one that has been doing some research on the transportation for me. We should have that report pretty quick. Once he gets the report to me, he said at the beginning of this week, then I'll be pulling together a transportation committee for negotiations for our bus, with our bus company. So we'll do that as soon as I get the report. Until I get the report, I still don't know where we are in comparison to everybody else. So I'm waiting for that information. Facility meeting, as I said, we're going to call a special meeting or one more meeting for the facility group. That'll be on the 23rd. I think I'm looking at the elementary school media center just because we have a nice whiteboard there and it's conducive to good discussion. So we're looking at July 23rd at 6:30, probably in the elementary media center for the facilities meeting. Brought an example. We did do some research. At the facility committee, one of the things we've talked about is sealing up just the windows that are already sealed on the inside of the elementary school on the east and kind of south side of the building. We've had a lot of discussions from, $325,000 tearing all of those, the whole wall out. The facilities committee's recommendation was that we just cover them up, except for the windows, of course, that open. Keep those for light. Looking at steel, you can take a look at this and some colors. But this is kind of what we're looking at doing. Probably going to be able to do it for about $25,000. So certainly a lot less than I think we budgeted initially, about $125,000. So, but we think at least we kind of got a bid on that, and there's an organization, I think it's local, that will do it for about 25. We have to look at that, and I'm hoping that I can get some advice from somebody that has a lot more taste than I have, so that we can get some color or maybe some highlights too, so it'll be a nice looking wall. when it's all said and done.
Well, actually, I wanted to have green on quite a bit of it, but at the same time, I have to be careful so it doesn't look really bad. So, one of our committees suggested making it mesh, so it looks very nice. Well, in all the stuff we had when we were interviewing Ari Mortons and everything, there was an elementary school there that had small windows just like ours, that had just about a 4x6 piece that came out in front, like a little awning, and it was only about that high, and it had a pole that went up to support it. And if you would just make it look nice aesthetically, maybe, and then make that bulldog green, that little awning sticking
Now,
out.
I can only
and
tell
it
you
would
that.
just accent it.
Yeah, there wasn't a bulldog green.
Yeah, well, I saw how ugly that was, so we all went dark green.
So, but I think certainly we can look at it, but I think we're gonna be able to do it a lot cheaper than at least originally we felt. So, special board meeting I mentioned, I'm gonna post that, it's gonna be, July 28th, 6:30 seminar. That's what I'm gonna post it for. I think that's a Monday if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna reopen the head cook position. We just didn't get a lot of applicants, we're gonna give it another try. So, and also, I think I'd let most of the board know in one way or another that we had talked about hiring a head of food service. That person has withdrawn her name, so we won't be doing that, but I do believe that she'd be willing to do some consulting for us. Maybe take a look at our food service, how we're put together, what we're doing well, what we might be able to change, particularly if we're bringing a new head cook in that may not have as much experience as we would like. Certainly to have somebody there to give us some suggestion would help, so we're looking more at it as maybe as a consultant, now just to start things out. I do need to have a representative from the board, again, that has some really good taste, work with Gretchen about the plaque that will be on the legacy wall for the school district. So do I have a volunteer that would be willing to be the contact person? Truly, you don't want me to do it. All right, I would have to talk to somebody else and find an alternate for myself, so.
I'll work with Gretchen.
All right. I will give her the name and you can help work with the plaque on what it's gonna kind of look like, what we're gonna have on it. I suppose you could have a bulldog on there if you wanted. But,
Green?
a green bulldog. I don't know if you can have a green bulldog on there. Be aware that Carol Levin is doing a news story, and I know that Max is putting some information for me together. It's on concussions at the high school level. So they're asking us for a lot of information about football helmets, recommissioning of them, buying them. You know, there's a lot of questions. I talked with a few ADs in addition, and I know that Max has been talking to people, you know, about how many concussions. Well, we really haven't necessarily kept track of anything that might be that. But anyway, just be aware there's going to be a news story eventually, but we're putting some information together for them. They have a right to have that information. They don't have a right to have names or anything like that, but they do have a right for the other stuff. Be aware that the two administrators, myself, did a survey from MDE that they sent out for schools that have made great strides. And they only sent it to those schools because they want to do the survey and then let other schools know what those schools are doing to be successful, and we just completed that survey. They did ask us again to do that this year, which was pretty cool. I think having said that, now that I have Deb as the person, I think that's what I have.
Do we have any other sharing amongst anybody? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Lou, second by Deb. Further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no.